The interesting thing is when the first study came out, the coal industry issued a big press release saying, no, it wasn't our mercury, it must have been the pharmaceutical companies. So if mercury is ever implicated, and I believe it has been implicated in autism, we have the coal industry, we have the pharmaceutical industry, we have the fish industry, and we have the dental industry. And the United States government yesterday, the Food and Drug Administration, ruled that mercury amalgams in the teeth of pregnant women is potentially hazardous to the fetus. And this is something that I've been saying, it's in my book, I write about amalgams quite a bit, because you have to look at the entire mercury burden. Every time you chew food, you release small amounts of mercury vapor into your mouth. You breathe them in. People who have amalgams have higher levels of mercury in their urine than people who don't. So it stands to reason a pregnant woman might, if she is unable to metabolize this metal and get rid of it, it might start to concentrate in the fetus. So that child is already starting at a disadvantage.
Okay, so that'll be a tiny part of it, because I've had 3 children, 2 are fine, 1's not, so it's a tiny part, and I had fillings.
Correct.
So that would have been a little bit towards my son starting his progress.
Well, it may also be the genetics,
journey to autism.
that the child who's fine was able to excrete his or her mercury, whereas the other 2 were not.
Okay, so to summarise up your time over here, I mean, I'd have to say that we're obviously going to have to look to America for a lot of progress over there on all of this, because it's not a lot happening over here as much as we're battling down the doors here, and there's a lot of us doing that, but it's not having much effect. So to summarise your visit over here, and I do apologise, I went to see your talk in Parliament, I went to see your talk in Oxford Street. It was brilliant, and everybody there that saw it thought it was brilliant, and I'm sorry that the press weren't there, and I'm sorry for any bad treatments you got over here on behalf of the people who did think you were wonderful.
Thank you, and I don't hold it against your country. I think it's a wonderful place.
And to summarise up our country, and I don't mean the beautiful gardens and museums, I'm talking about the autism situation over here.
Right. Well, you know, I had a question at Regent Hall from Dr. Michael Fitzpatrick, and that was, who is opposed to this, and that was, why are there no scientists or researchers or medical people in the UK? Why do they all think that this has been disproven? And I reminded him that all of the evidence that has been generated to disprove the theory contains its own methodological limitations and has been questioned very rigorously and critiqued and criticized, not by me, but by the National Institutes of Health and the Institute of Medicine, which said there was a lack of transparency in the process. So to base the exoneration of vaccines on a handful of epidemiological studies without ever looking at a single child who got sick is irresponsible, frankly. And we haven't talked about it today, but in addition to the presidential candidates, we have the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Julie Gerberding, saying that yes, children with mitochondrial dysfunction may suffer vaccine injury and may develop symptoms that at least appear to be autism, and that's what happened to Hannah Pauling, and that we need to keep an open mind about this. Well, an open mind means having an open mind, and yet the British
closed doors,
closed minds, at least in the leadership here. So I reminded Dr. Fitzpatrick of that, and I also reminded him of Dr. Bernardine Healy, who was the former head of the National Institutes of Health, our premier federal health research agency, multi-billion-dollar government agency. Dr. Healy is a mainstream medical practitioner. She was appointed by the first President Bush. She's a Republican. And she came out and said, this is not over. And we need to look at these kids who got sick. And vaccines have not been exonerated. And these large population studies would not have picked up vulnerable subgroups of children. So what I said to Dr. Fitzpatrick was, Dr. Gerberding in my country says we need to keep an open mind. But you're telling me that the entire medical profession refuses to keep an open mind. That's a real dichotomy there. So I would hope.
What did he say, by the way, to that?
Well, there really wasn't much he could say. I think he just sort of nodded and sat down. Because I said to him, I would hope that you, Dr. Fitzpatrick, and these medical professionals to whom you refer would take the time to come to the United States and to speak to Dr. Gerber and to speak to Dr. Healy and to speak to John McCain and his staff and to speak to Barack Obama and his staff and find out why they're keeping an open mind. And if they want to come back and say the Americans are crazy, the Americans don't know what they're talking about, we do, that's their prerogative. But if they're not going to listen to me, and that's fine, nobody has to listen to me, they might want to, oh, I don't know, put in a call. Dr. Healy works at U.S. News and World Report in Washington, D.C. Pick up the phone, call information. She's very accessible.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
You're welcome.
I hope we could talk much more in the future. And thank you for coming to England.
I'm very happy to be here.